they're thrown out. The judge, and especially once they do the competence hearing.
I'm rhetorical in my statement. How can they throw out a duly drawn will?
Well, because the person is dead in the law and they were incompetent. We proved they were incompetent, so these papers don't mean anything. And they throw them aside, and they hand everything over to these predatory guardians. Everything. And this is medical directives. The case of Sarah and Gary Harvey out there in New York is such it's actually how I ever got involved in any of this was my interview with her. And through a traumatic accident her husband had ended up under a guardianship. And this woman has fought for 4 years to keep her husband alive. And they have done everything to drive her nuts. They have filed against her. They had restraining orders against her. And they now have appointed her husband an attorney who has decided that her husband wants a divorce from her. He hasn't been able to speak for 4 years, but the attorney is convinced her husband needs to be divorced from her. So they're trying to interfere in the marital status of these people to benefit the state. They have tried on occasion to starve and dehydrate him to death, and she's fought like a banshee to keep him from doing it.
That's what you have to do, yeah.
It is the most grotesque thing. She has gone to her state representatives. She has gone to Washington, D.C. She's gone to the DOJ. She has gone to anybody and everybody trying to get help. Even Cuomo, we put up an article to Cuomo asking him to intervene and help this woman and her husband. Not a word. Nobody will do anything. And I hear this repeatedly, too, from people. I contacted the county attorney. I contacted the state's attorney. They told me to go to the Department of Health and Human Services. Department of Human Health and Services told me to go to the police. The police said there's nothing they can do. And it goes around and around. Nobody will do anything about this.
Right.
Nobody.
Right. In the case of children, they have, I know in California, a term called a guardian ad litem. It's an attorney that is literally put in charge of a child to allegedly represent the child's interests against both parents, who are usually in an argument over custody. And once that happens, that child is dead in the law. And it becomes, well, let me just suggest that I know quite a bit about this. And the issue of guardianship has been, I have seen it abused, and I have seen people harmed terribly, tragically. And I have no need for guardianship at all. All right, hold on. We'll come back with Marty Oakley in just a few minutes. And if anybody thinks this is not a deadly serious issue, you better think again. We'll be right back. Back with Marty Oakley talking about guardianship. Now, these organizations promising to help people avoid these kinds of pitfalls are apparently in many cases trolling and profiling future victims. So keep that in mind. Now, how do people, first of all, become aware and alert and informed about this? And secondly, how can they truly avoid this kind of horror, this kind of nightmare? Now, what you said, and let me repeat it for our listeners, wills can be thrown out, just tossed aside as if they mean nothing. So you've got no security. Once you get into that guardian's system, you're in trouble. Go ahead, please, Marty.
Well, the one thing we have found that people can do, if you have an estate of any size and you think this could be a possibility, and you all need to think that it could be a possibility, if you accumulate anything, you're fair game. And what people are beginning to do is transfer now title to property, access to accounts, investments, so on and so forth.
Before
this happens.
Yeah.
It's the only way they can protect their elderly parents or grandparents, whomever it is. And once the money, the asset motivation is removed, it seems the vultures fly the coop. I consider this one most predatory activities I've ever seen. We talk about human trafficking, and people always talk about it in the context of trafficking for sex. But there's all kinds of human trafficking going on as we've been rendered commodities by a global cabal, whatever's going on there. And so everybody is fair game, and it's what are you worth in the system? How much value do you have if we get possession of you? And that's something else people need to understand. Let's say they take Grandma and they kidnap her from her home.
Right.
We have a recording of one lady in Colorado where the police were battering down her door. She was 92 years old. She's on the phone screaming for help, that somebody's breaking in. Call the police, call the police. It's the police breaking in her house. They take this woman out of the house in handcuffs.
Well, they'll be sending SWAT teams next.
Nursing home where she's immediately drugged because she was hysterical.
And there's nothing that the family can do about it.
Nope. And immediately, if they try to protest or do anything, charges are levied against them. You're a threat to this person. The neighbors said that you were abusive. The neighbors never said anything.
Oh, this is evil. Evil stuff.
And now, see, you have to defend yourself from these charges.
Yep.
And the guardian, the predatory guardian, and the attorneys on that side can go into these courtrooms and make the most outrageous allegations, and they're accepted by the court. And there's not much you can do to refute that. And even when these charges are proven to be unfounded, it remains in the probate case, but it never shows the dismissal of charges. It shows that the charge was levied, but never that it was dismissed as unfounded. This is so sick, and it's so frightening.
Is this being orchestrated or coordinated at some higher level, or is this just being carried out at a low to mid-level where human lust, greed, avarice, and downright insanity of evil prevails? Is it just an opportunity that's taken advantage of by predatory guardians and courts, or is this really being orchestrated and somehow formulated at a higher level?
It has to be at a higher level because the sequence of events and the method of operation is almost identical state to state, court to court.
Wow. All right.
The system, the way this has gone about, the things that are done, the motions that are filed, the rulings by the judges, you'd swear it was the same people just moving from one state to another. There has got to be some kind of connection, some kind of contact that these people have.
Right.
You can't have this in all 50 states. Now, the other thing that's happened is, I'm going to use Iowa as an example here. There's a judge there named Ruth Klotz, and Ruth is in her late 80s. She's been voted by the state legislature to avoid retirement mandatory at 70 because she's done such good work in probate, and she's got a lifetime appointment. She went to the Iowa legislature some years ago, and in the guardianship statutes had the requirement for the following of due process removed from those statutes. Now, her reasoning was that there were emergency situations where due process could not be followed, so they needed to remove it. What I've told people is whether it's in that statute or it isn't, it's in your state constitution, it is in the federal constitution, and so whether they included it or they don't is neither here nor there, but the state act and these people within the state act, as if because it's not in that statute and was intentionally removed, they don't have to follow due process. And so this is some of the dirty work that goes on. Ruth Klotz has profited handsomely from her handling of these probate cases. I think personally she should be subject to one and see how she likes it. But this is not an accident. This is not just some aberrant thing that happened. It's not once in a while one might slip through the cracks.
It's an industry.
Every day.
Yeah, it's an industry. I understand. The looting of America, of America's elderly, of America's incapacitated, it doesn't matter. And when you become dead to the law, and again, I've seen this, the words are indescribable. You cannot believe you're living in what used to be called the United States of America. It's like something you'd expect in a totalitarian country. But I mean, even in those countries, I'll bet it doesn't happen like this. This is so insidious and so clever and so blatant at the same time that it's almost preposterous, but it's real.
These groups, NASGA, National Association to Stop Guardianship Abuse, many of these other groups and individuals that are activists working on their own have gone to Washington, D.C. on numerous occasions, testified over the 14th and 15th, met with several elected officials, and told their stories. They've been in front of that Committee on Aging and the Elderly, headed by Herb Kohl. Like I say, that was an exercise in futility. He could be, but anyway, it isn't. People say, "Well, I don't think they know." Yes, they do know. They've been told and told and told. These people have pleaded for help. There is almost a complete media blackout on this. They won't report it.
Yeah, it's easily good enough for 60 Minutes. I wonder if we'll see it. Thank goodness you're doing the work you're doing. I'm appalled. Because, again, I've known people, I think many of you listening may have known people who have had these kinds of encounters with the law, which is not a law for us, folks. Not at all. So if you're getting up there in years, if any of you are, transfer your wealth, your property, your assets to your heirs or whoever. But don't leave it in the lurch, which is exactly what you're doing. Don't depend on a will to protect you, because it won't.
It won't.
Oh, this is hard to believe, folks.
And I tell people all the time that I've talked to that said, well, what can we do? For one thing, don't tell anybody what you've got.
Oh, please. Absolutely.
Don't tell what you've got. Don't tell anybody, I'm worth this amount of money or I have this much land. Keep your mouth shut.
Unless you're in huge debt, then that's okay.
Yeah, there you go. Then they don't want it.
Hold on a sec. Be right back, Marty. Just a second.
Okay.
We're talking about guardianship, folks, and you all need to pay very close attention to this, as you have been this hour with Marty Oakley.